You worked harder, did everything right, and still the promotion went to someone else, not someone better. Someone who talks more than they deliver. Someone whose work you know well, and know is not stronger than yours. You watched it happen and felt the unfairness with a clarity that almost hurt. And the explanation you gave yourself was that this person was playing dirty, doing something you were not willing to do. But that is not exactly what happened. What happened is more uncomfortable than that. It was not betrayal or conspiracy. It was that you and that person were playing different games, and no one told you. Corporate politics is not what it looks like from the outside. It is not the group of people who get along with the boss. It is not the lunch clique. It is something more structural and more invisible. It is the gap between how work is supposed to function and how it actually functions. You were handed an incomplete manual, and the system kept moving according to rules you did not know. And this is where most people lose years without realizing it. It is 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Your boss has just received a message from their manager asking who could lead the new project. They have 3 minutes to answer before another meeting. They are not going to open a spreadsheet with your metrics. They are not going to review your deliverables from the quarter. They are going to type the first name that comes to mind. And that name is almost always the person they had a conversation with last week about their career goals. Not yours. Even if you solved more problems, even if you kept more processes running, even if you are objectively more competent. That is not irrational favoritism. It is memory. It is perception. It is how the human brain works when it has to make decisions with incomplete information. There is a rule that almost no company teaches explicitly. Being good at your job is necessary, but it is not enough. You also have to be perceived as good at your job by the right people at the right moments. And no one tells you that directly, because if they said it out loud, it would sound like something that should not exist. But it does exist, and it operates far more consistently than any company culture handbook is ever going to admit. 2 people, same team, same level of results for 6 months. One of them sends their boss a short email every week, 3 lines about what they made progress on, and 1 problem they solved. The other assumes their work speaks for itself and says nothing. Then the cuts come. The boss has to eliminate 1 position. They have a recent, clear picture of what the first person contributes. The second person is a blurry smudge in their memory, not because they worked less, but because they worked quietly. Invisible work gets treated the same way. Work that does not exist gets treated. And that breaks a lot of people, because the second person went home every night knowing they had done their job and still lost. Not because the boss is malicious, but because perception does not work like an audit. Your boss is not carrying around a spreadsheet of your contributions. They are carrying a feeling, a vague but persistent impression of whether you are reliable, whether you have potential, whether you are worth betting on. And that impression is built from fragments you probably never thought mattered. If you want to understand how that system really works, not the official version, but the one nobody writes down in any internal document, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because the rules nobody explained to you are exactly what we break down here. But that is still not the most expensive part. The most expensive part is what happens when credit shifts. You work on a project with someone else. You do the most complex part. In the leadership meeting, the other person presents it. 3 months later, everyone remembers that project as if it were theirs, and you feel like something was stolen from you, because in some way it was. But what actually happened was not that credit followed effort. It followed the person who communicated the effort. Worse, you help someone who is overwhelmed. You pull them out of a difficult situation, and that person gets visibility from the result. 6 months later, when an opportunity comes up, that colleague is seen as someone with leadership potential. You are seen as someone reliable who solves problems, which is not the same thing, and no one gives you any explanation for why. In many companies, the person who organizes, fixes things, trains new hires, and holds the operation together when everything gets complicated ends up being seen as essential to the operation, not as someone worth promoting. They become the backbone of the team, the one nobody wants to move, the one who gets more workload as a reward and less recognition as a result. They are the person people call when everything goes wrong, but not the one they name when an opportunity finally opens up. The most dangerous part is not that this exists, it is that you start blaming yourself for it. Because from that point on, you are not just competing with the system, you start competing against your own self esteem. You start thinking something must be missing in you, that if you still have not been recognized, it must be because you are still not ready. And that interpretation makes you double down exactly where you should not. You produce more, deliver more, and the result is that you become even more indispensable in the role you are already in, harder to move, more expensive to replace. What looked like the solution is part of the trap. Visibility is the system, and you can be completely right about the unfairness and still keep losing anyway. And there is a scene that repeats itself more often than it should. You are the one who knows where the mistakes are, who understands why the process gets stuck, who can explain what went wrong and how to fix it. When something breaks, they come to you. When someone new gets lost, they come to you. When a difficult deliverable has to be saved, they come to you. But when the time comes to decide who has real potential, who represents the future, who deserves to be part of the next conversation, they do not come to you for that. They come to you to hold things together. And in many companies, holding things together is not always interpreted as leadership. Very often, it is interpreted as permanence. The most frustrating part is that from the inside, that difference is almost invisible at first, because they keep praising you. They keep telling you that you are key, that they trust you, that the team would not function the same way without you. And all of that may be true. But being important, so the present does not collapse, is not the same as being considered to build the next level. One makes you necessary, the other makes you promotable. And there are people who spend years without understanding that the company values them enormously in order to keep them exactly where they are. And that still is not the whole problem. There is something else operating quietly, the reputation built in difficult moments. When something goes wrong, you tell the truth even when it is uncomfortable. When someone on your team is at the limit, you help. When blame starts being assigned, you let another person carry something that was not only their mistake. Those moments seem small while they are happening, but they add up. And reputation functions like a currency that is spent and saved with far less transparency than money. Relationships inside a company are not about being fake. They are about being known. When your boss chooses someone for something important, they choose someone they trust. And trust does not come from a resume. It comes from dozens of small interactions that build an image. You do not have to be friends with everyone, but people do need to know who you are beyond your output. And this is where a lot of people keep losing years without understanding where the real cost was. The moment when you say something matters just as much as what you say. You can have the perfect case for asking for a promotion and bring it up right after the company announces layoffs. The case is still perfect, but it will not matter. You can have a brilliant idea and bring it to your boss at the worst moment of their week. The idea is still brilliant, but they are not going to hear it. Reading the context is not dishonest. It is situational intelligence. The exact same proposal at the right moment can move forward. At the wrong moment, it dies. And there is one last mechanism that operates with a quiet kind of brutality. Proximity to success matters more than exact contribution. If you are on a successful project, some of that success gets attached to your name, even if your role was secondary. If you are close to something that fails, some of that failure sticks too, even if you had no control over it. Human beings remember associations, not details. And that means where you are and who you are with can weigh just as much as what you produce. So what changes when you understand all of this? You stop waiting for someone to discover you. If your work is not visible, it will stay invisible. It is not self-promotion. It is strategic documentation. Give updates. Speak in meetings. Make sure the people who make decisions know what you are doing and why it matters. Build relationships with people you genuinely respect, not with everyone, just with a few. Help when you can. Ask for help when you need it. Be someone who comes to mind when an opportunity appears. Learn how decisions are actually made in your environment. Who has power? Who influences that power? not to manipulate, but so you are not naive. And make what you want visible. Organizations do not guess ambition. They respond to clear signals. You were not overlooked because you were not good enough. You were evaluated with a scoring system nobody showed you. The problem was never you. It was the incomplete manual. And the person who gets that map earlier, even if they produce less, almost always goes farther. Not because the system rewards the best people best, but because it recognizes the people who know how to read it first. If what you just heard gave words to something you had been living through, but could not explain, give this video a like. That signal tells the algorithm this content deserves to reach more people trying to navigate the corporate world without understanding the real rules. And if you do not want to keep walking into professional environments without knowing what is actually at stake, subscribe and turn on notifications, because that is exactly what we do here.